You're listening to DraftKings Network.
This is the Dan Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
I can't fix my hair. It's fine. Go ahead.
No, I'm telling you, it's like accidental, but like stylish all at the same time.
Little Kramer vibe.
It's a disaster.
Keep running your hand through your hair, yeah. Seems to be helping.
It's getting worse, Mike.
Yeah, Dan, just start.
Let's talk about this for a second.
disastrous.
No, let's talk about this because this segment's a problem in general. David Samson tries to be a professional, but Adnan joins us from some Best Western somewhere. Look at him. Now, unprepared for the segment, trying to fix his hair. He looks giant because we can't get proportions around here correct. Brad Williams looked like he was larger than me. And he's a little person in Hollywood. You laugh, but Adnan is giant and fiddling with his hair, and you're not going to fix it. It's a mess. You only do your hair correctly when you're on the big broadcast, when you're on MLB Network, being professional broadcaster guy.
Yeah, but Dan, once the lights are on and we're on air, his hair settles into an amazing television form of itself.
Adnan, why is it that David Samson every week is right here on time and ready to go, and you're hurtling from the Cinesphere, from some sort of Scorsese movie that has made the ground vanish from beneath your feet, and you get here and you're just a mess. You're not ready. You're not professional. You're not promoting your podcast here correctly.
Well, it's true, Dan. But what it is a true film critic is up all night watching movies. When you're a critic, you're constantly bombarded with screenings and being sent information, and you feel like the job never ends. So as the true critic that I am, I'm always a little disheveled. When's the last time you saw a film critic and said that person looks prim and proper and studied? That's not the way it is. By nature of the job, you're just a little bit of a mess. So that's kind of what it is. I'm going to be honest with you.
I have a newsflash for you, Adnan. You're not a film critic. You are a broadcaster.
I'd like to point out, maybe Mike Ryan can help me out here. Mike, where did I see Killers of the Flower Moon? It was a critic screening. That's right. So if I was invited to a critic screening,
David.
Ergo, I am a critic.
Got his ass.
David is jealous about this, and we can get into that in just a second. But what's been revealed to me over the last couple of years is that basically, and I say this in the kindest way possible, Adnan, as a broadcaster, is a thespian and an actor covered in broadcasting fraud and veneer. But this is the real him, disheveled film critic who he actually wants to be. And he's an imposter on television. He loves baseball, but he has to comb his hair correctly for MLB Network because the real him has to be in disguise. That's why he's not at ESPN anymore.
I think you're 100% right, Dan. You've been able to see through me. I'm as fraudulent as it gets. Thanks for making me transparent now to the audience and revealing the true self that is me.
David, where are you on your jealousy? Because he is an actual critic. He has been anointed by Scorsese for thespian lovers of film. He is allowed to be a critic. It's the highest honor in this silly sphere of criticizing movies.
Anybody can do what he does. I was actually more jealous of how good he was during the pregame and postgame on MLB Network. So I must admit that really is his lane. And despite the way he looks and how disheveled he is at some hotel, my guess is somewhere near the airport in Phoenix, it's not ideal, Adnan. But on TV with your purple tie, purple suit, I was watching and you were good.
I appreciate that, David. I know how tough it is for you to compliment somebody, so I appreciate you recognizing my skills as a broadcaster. You're a good man. And I wish I could return the favor, but I appreciate your compliment nonetheless.
Ouch. And is he a good man? I have a follow on that because you said you're a good man because he complimented you, but do you mean it?
Well, at least I didn't do this, Dan. I didn't take the compliment and then compliment him back, which would have been incredibly insincere. I just lied and said he's a good man, which is also, as you point out, fraudulent.
Okay. I love that we're finally seeing the real you. Finally, he's been unmasked. Are we doing this segment because Chris Cody said we're now just catering? We're going to get to, do you guys want to talk about baseball or do you want to talk about movies meant to try and reach people younger than you because this segment is flailing because we're choosing movies from 35 years ago?
I wouldn't mind a little bit of baseball if you could, Dan. I'll kick it to David. David, I know it was not an instant classic when it comes to the World Series, a 5-gamer. Did have an epic game 1, of course, thanks to Seager and Garcia. couple of games were blowouts, but great year for baseball overall. Attendance up 10%, 70 million fans. And how about pace of play? Everyone always bemoans how long postseason games are. 3 hours and 22 minutes a year ago. This year, 3 hours and 1 minute. More stolen bases. I was aghast that the Diamondbacks with sacked bunts. Didn't agree with Gabriel Moreno doing it. Your number 3 hitter with 2 on. But regardless, I think it was a great year for baseball overall. Agreed?
I do agree. I'm just trying to figure out whether or not Meadowlark is willing to send you a microphone.
That's funny you say that as your shit cuts out.
Okay, and we had these problems from LA too, and I'm trying to keep this fledgling enterprise on the air. It's been on the ground for a long time. I'm trying to get it into. Don't laugh.
Go this way, Dano.
Samson, stop laughing at me. The whole thing, but also the segment. And you love baseball, and Samson, God Almighty, they're working you too much. CBS cannot be paying you enough. Every time I turned on. Anywhere I turn on Roku, you're there spitting gasbaggery at me.
It was definitely not gasbaggery. It was fantastic baseball analysis, actually.
A lot of it for a month, 6 weeks. And now that it's over, put a bow on it.
I will put a bow on it by saying that there are 2 ways to rebuild a team, and fan bases should recognize that you don't need to spend $500 million like the Rangers did. You don't have to trade for DeGrom, sign DeGrom, trade for Scherzer. You can do it the Diamondbacks way. They wasted money on Madison Bumgarner, but they're made up of a great young team all the way the Marlins won in 2003. That's why I really thought the Diamondbacks would win this year. And so every team should have hope that you can lose 100 games 2 years ago and make it to the World Series this year. That's good for baseball.
Also of note, Dan, Mad Dog Russo was yesterday in the suite wearing a Torey Lovullo jersey, which I got to say, it's a hell of a story. The way he just inspired the Diamondbacks. Dan, I think, honestly, Mad Dog Russo is not getting nearly enough credit for inspiring Arizona. Next year, you've got to put yourself on the line. You've got to say, whatever team is down, if they don't win, then Dan Lebatard's going to retire. Can we raise the stakes next year for you?
Okay. Yeah, but I'd have to actually do it, right? I think this has been mildly interesting that now Howard Stern has walked away from Mad Dog Russo because Mad Dog Russo changed his bet, didn't retire, was going to do a bikini down, I don't know, somewhere in New York. He was going to wear a bikini, and he had to be talked out of it by Stephen A. Smith. So now First Take is the standard for not doing what you're supposed to do and disappointing Howard Stern.
Yeah, I mean, he could have just, listen, boxers retire all the time. He could have retired for like a week and okay, like Floyd Mayweather, I'm back. I mean, I'm with you. I was a little disappointed he didn't retire for longer than 5 minutes, but I'm telling you, he's taking credit for inspiring the Arizona Diamondbacks. We talked to the manager, Torey Lovullo. He was laughing about it. You guys saw the video of them chanting Mad Dog after winning. I never thought a radio personality, even somebody as irrepressible as Mad Dog Russo, could inspire a baseball team. But evidently that was the case. David, does it infuriate you that the Rangers just spent a bunch of money and got the World Series?
No, because it doesn't happen that often. I was much more emboldened by the fact that the Padres, Mets, and Yankees were not in the playoffs. I actually took great joy in that, even though it's bad for the game to have the Yankees and Mets not in the playoffs. But I was thankful that they didn't make it because it shows that you can do it a different way and the right way. And the Rangers didn't just spend money. They did what I thought overspend on Simeon, but I was wrong. I thought they overspent on Seager, but I was wrong. But look at the number of rookies they have in their lineup, and Garcia's not even arbitration eligible. So Chris Young did a phenomenal job. And there was a Marlins draft pick on the mound that you may not have known, but his name is Andrew Heaney. So that made me happy that he got a ring.
Are you in a position where you are you're rooting for a San Diego to happen? I can't explain what happened in San Diego. Snell was great, and their lineup, you can't convince me Arizona's actually better than on paper than what that Padres team was supposed to be. I don't even understand what happened.
Wait, Chris Young, the former really tall pitcher of the Rangers, is now the GM?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's wacky.
Ivy Leaguer.
Wow. All right, cool.
Baseball.
As you were.
I can answer what happened in San Diego is they put together a team of names thinking that it would work. They're sort of like the Clippers. That's how I view the Padres.
But they were, those players are indeed great. And then Snell for 30 games is an ace unlike any ace in the sport. Like, that ought to be enough. It's not like the teams in the National League were that good at the bottom end of this.
But that's baseball. That's the whole point of baseball, that you can have a Cy Young Award winner like the Marlins had Sandy, and it doesn't necessarily translate because it's such a team game. It's not like the NBA, where if you've got the MVP, the odds are you're in the playoffs and performing in the playoffs. Totally different. So the Padres were not a good team. They had good individual players. They had major chemistry issues, major clubhouse issues, major front office issues, and all of it basically tanked the season.
Maybe it's all Bob Melvin's fault. Now he'll be running the San Francisco Giants so they can figure things out. To David's point, by the way, the sad club, Dan, is now 5 teams never to win a World Series. Rays and Rockies haven't been around long enough, so how sad can you be? But Padres were talking about Brewers have never won a World Series around since 1970, and the Mariners have never even made a World Series going back to 77. So we'll see which one of these teams can end the hex.
David, are you as rah-rah as Adnan is about baseball success this year? Because those games, game one was magical, and then you need the series to be interesting after that, and it was not. None of the games were interesting. You couldn't even do strategy stuff. Like, they were all uninteresting games.
Yeah, I'm not actually. I think the pace of play and pace of action is better, but I don't like, it's sort of like the NBA where everyone's just shooting threes and it's chuck and duck. I don't like just sitting around waiting for the 3-run home run. I think it's better baseball and smarter baseball to do it the way Arizona does when they win, which is to put the game in motion. But problem is players aren't paid for that. They're paid to hit home runs. And as long as that happens and you're not penalized for strikeouts, you're going to have players on offense just going for home runs.
To David's point, teams that out-homered the opposition were 25-4 this postseason. And Texas and Arizona, Texas was 11-0, Arizona 7-0 when they scored the first run. So that's like an NBA team. Hey, 10-0 run, the game's over. So it would have been nice to have some late drama and not to prove that just home runs win ball games.
And super rare, unprecedented to win all of your postseason road games. Like, is that a fluke?
Yes, it's unheard of. It's 11-0 on the road for the postseason it's obviously a record, and I don't know that it will ever be matched.
Guys, we didn't have time for the movie stuff, and because you alienated young people even more by talking about something they want to talk about even less than the movies from 40 years ago, which is baseball.
Bets during this segment.
Yeah, nobody was listening to this segment.
I found out Chris Young was a genius.
That was wild.
That is they all rose from their gentle slumbers to be like, and then went right back to sleep. Oh, no.
Batard is entered the proceedings.
Hey, everybody. Happy football season. It's Mike, and let me tell you what I do from kickoff to the final whistle. I have a Miller Lite in my hand. I just don't go wrong with it. I learned from experience. There is only one light beer worthy of our national obsession, because what's the point of having a beer if it doesn't taste like beer? You don't want to spend any time while you're watching football thinking about what you're drinking. And with the dependable flavor of Miller Lite, you don't have to worry about it because it's only got 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12-ounce serving. With a smooth taste and a crisp, clean finish, you'll get all the taste that you crave without the calories. A light, less filling beer that tastes great in football, there's just no topping that, folks. At least not for me. This season, do what I do. Crack open a light beer that hits your taste buds so hard, you feel it in your heart. Make it Miller time all football season long. Get Miller Lite delivered right to your door. Visit MillerLite.com/Dan, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
Don Le Batard.
I actually thought you looked kind of good.
Stugotz.
Thank you. The beard's grown out a little bit. I got a little life in my face, I feel like. Little tan, Colorado, San Francisco. I had a great time, man.
You got life on your face.
You've got death on your face.
I think you got 40 to life on your face.
This is the Don Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
I rarely promise that an interview is coming up with such zeal as John Feinstein is the guy to talk to about Bob Knight. On this day, this is a guy, John Feinstein, who wrote a biography of Bob Knight that was one of the seminal sports works that there have been. I think he's written 48 books, and I think this is his most famous. So John Feinstein is joining us, but not via video, not via Zoom. He is old-timey. It's an old-timey call from the road. John Feinstein is with us, the author of Season on the Brink. Chris Cody, the floor is yours. It's the legendary John Feinstein. You think he's going to pull punches in this interview. I'm saying he will not. He's always told it like it is. The floor is yours, Chris Cody.
John, was this guy racist?
No, he wasn't racist, Chris. He liked to make jokes about blacks, Jews, women, Hispanics. If he knew, it was always to people he knew. It was to former players. It was to people like me. It was to women. He always wanted to shock, and he had very little to do with disliking blacks or Jews. Maybe it had something to do with disliking women. He was certainly a misogynist. But he that was Bob. You should read it. If you think I'm going to pull punches, Chris, you should read the column I wrote in the Washington Post today, which normally would have been called an appreciation for someone who's just passed away, but that would have been inaccurate.
This is one of the things.
We'll always be grateful to Bob.
This is one of the things that is.
Giving me the access he did.
Forgive me, I interrupted you a couple of times. He gave you access to write the, I'm not going to say the book that launched your career, but certainly turned you into somebody who could spend the rest of his career writing close to 50 books.
Right, it launched my career as an author. I was already at the Washington Post, but it was my first book, so you're absolutely right about that.
So how do you correctly eulogize him as somebody who was impacted by his life and wrote about him prodigiously and honestly? Because I think we learned the dirty side of Bob Knight because you were reporting inside the belly of the beast on somebody who it might have seemed, John, I don't know if, I don't want to medically diagnose him, but he certainly had an anger problem at the very least.
No question. I mean, yes, he did. But it's larger. I'm not a psychiatrist, obviously, but Bob always had to have the last word, regardless of the issue, with referees, with other players on his team or on the other team. Sometimes he hated Scott Skiles, who was a great player in college, and with administrators, with his bosses, who eventually fired him. He's on Miles Brand, the president of Indiana, fired him. So long after Miles Brand was dead, he refused to come back for Indiana's 40th anniversary of their undefeated 76 team because he was still proving to Miles Brand that he was tougher than he was. He was, because Miles Brand had died 7 years earlier. So, as I said, I'm always grateful for the access Bob gave me. He also spent 8 years attacking me for the book after it came out because he said I was supposed to leave his profanity out, which is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. We had discussed that he knew his profanity. Only a small percentage of it was going to be in the book because if I left it all in, I'd still be writing.
Had an impulse control problem as well, right? So what is the proper way, John Feinstein? Yeah. What is the proper way, to be respectful to the dead, to understand what this man meant to a region of our country, but to also go through him being an egomaniac who was drunk with power at the height of making coaches into star leaders who, Nick Saban 50 years before Nick Saban.
He was a bully, Dan. I saw him bully people often. He was a pathological liar, and if you know the definition of that, it means you believe your lies. When he said I had told him I would leave the profanity out of the book, I think he honestly believed that. But he was one of the great college coaches of all time, based on his record. And as I said at the end of the column, he touched, the old cliche about how many lives he's touched. He touched a lot of lives. And a majority were for the positive, for the good. He being one, even though he spent 8 years attacking me. But he also touched a lot of lives not for good. People who he did bully, people who he turned against. There's an anecdote, again, in the column, which I had not written before, because Jim Cruz asked me not to write it while Knight was alive, in which Knight had seen Calbert Cheaney in high school and didn't think he was any good, and told his coaches to not recruit him. And So they backed off, and Calvert Chaney, who was from Evansville, committed to Evansville, where Cruz was coaching. Knight then saw Chaney in a summer camp and said, "Why aren't we recruiting this kid?" The coaches said, "Because you told us not to." And he said, "Well, why don't you give him a call and see if he'd be interested in Indiana?" Well, what do you think a kid from Indiana is going to say to that? So he decommitted and ended up, of course, as the all-time leading scorer in the Big Ten at Indiana. And Cruz, having lost someone who arguably would have been the greatest player in Evansville history, called Knight and said, "If another coach did that to me, you would never forgive him." You know, Cruz had played on the 76 championship team, coached under Knight for 8 years, and Knight started screaming at him about everything he had done for him. And Jim finally said, "You know, Coach, the saddest thing about your life is you treat your enemies better than you treat your friends." And that was often true, and sadly often true. And that's why a lot of people who were very close to him once upon a time, including Mike Krzyzewski, are no longer close to him, or were no longer close to him.
Can you explain from inside the belly of the beast? A hungry John Feinstein gets to the top of sports writing by doing this book with this access. What does it then feel like the 8 years after that to have this intimate an experience where I am certain that John Feinstein, legendary journalist, trying to be fair, trying to be reasonable, trying to be objective, just did a journalistic book with a man who probably didn't have an appreciation at all for the journalism in it. You embed yourself in his life, and for 8 years he attacks you when you dedicated your life to writing a complete look at this man's life. Where did you betray him? What was he seeing in you in the personal of the relationship, and how did it feel to be, I imagine, hurt by that, even though you're trying to be just a professional?
Yeah, it didn't hurt as much as you might think, Dan, because I knew he was going to find something not to like about the book. That's who Bob Knight was. He was never going to call me up and say, "Gosh, John, you did a great job with a difficult subject." He was going to find something not to like. I was surprised that it was his profanity, because it's not like he ever tried to hide it from anyone. But I wasn't surprised by it. And I knew what he was saying about me wasn't true. That was the other thing that made it easier to deal with for me. But I understood that this was part of who Bob was. And I was able to handle it. Sure, it was disappointing. I actually wrote him a letter after he first started attacking me publicly. Actually, privately. I wrote him before that. And I said, "Bob, you and I discussed the fact that for this book to have credibility, it had to be true. It had to be honest. If I wrote a book about you and acted as if you never used profanity, people would just say, oh, you know, Knight gave Feinstein access, and he wrote him a love letter." So I will say this. It was gratifying when he decided to, quote unquote, forgive me 8 years later. I was in Hawaii covering the Maui Classic. Indiana was playing, and so was Maryland. And I was with Gary Williams. And out of the blue, Knight stopped us in the lobby and started acting as if we had never had any kind of falling out. Started asking me about my son, who was just been born a few months earlier, things like that. And so I was happy when he talked to me, but Gary said to me, "After all the names he's called you, why would you even speak to him?" And I said, "Because he built my house." So, I've had all sorts of different emotions about Bob. When I did my book on Red Auerbach, he loved Red. He talked to me on the phone for 2 hours about Red. And I said to him at the end, "Listen, I know you did this for Red, but I'm grateful that you did it." And he said, "I was happy to do it. I'd do anything for Red," including even talking to me.
I have to get out of here, but in 2 minutes or less, John Feinstein, what do you do, even though you're not a psychologist or his therapist? You did embed yourself in his life. How do you explain the roots of Pathological Liar?
Well, I think you'd have to go back to the book because, again, the kind of access he gave me, I went and talked to his mom. I talked to his high school coaches, people like that. It started when he was a kid. He was an only child. He was basically raised by his mom and his grandmother because his father was deaf and he couldn't really communicate with him on a regular basis. He was the star athlete in Orville, Ohio, and then went to Ohio State and almost never got to play. And he never completely got over that. And I think he spent the rest of his life trying to be a bigger star than Jerry Lucas, John Havlicek, and Mel Knoll, who were his teammates on the national championship team.
John, thank you for being on with us, sir. And if people have not seen A Season on the Brink, go ahead, John, on your way out. Rat-a-tat-tat. Name all the sports books better than that one.
My book on Army-Navy.
All right, get out of here,
Civil
John.
War.
No punches held.
Thank you for your service. See you later, John.
All right, Dan. Take care.
Oh, my God, did I get filled with longing during that? It felt like 1980s AM radio.
Ambient noise.
The good old days.
Yeah.
On a coupler.
Roy, thank you. Did you get nostalgic? Do you remember
did.
when Big Bob Knight came to play Final Four type basketball in Miami that one year, and I greeted him with a column just ripping him.
Oh, man. It was wonderful hearing that, man. All we needed was a landline, and we would have been set.
What's crazy about that, doing the show as long as we have, is that used to pass for, we would have no issue with that connection.
It was a good line.
We got a good line. Good line. We'd all be really happy about it.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was an excellent sound quality interview from our past. That's why I was filled with longing.
Can we talk briefly about the start of that interview?
I don't think he loved that. Thanks for that, Dan.
Hey guys, it's Tony. US Cellular is introducing Us Mode. It's like airplane mode, but for people. You got that? Cool. It's a way to set up your phone so it doesn't get in the way of people really being with each other. Block distractions and make way for a real connection. Give it a try. Visit US Cellular in-store or online, and they'll help set up your phone to Us Mode. For free. Really, for free. Even if you're not a customer, they'll still do it. That's how good US Cellular is. Built for superior 5G connection and real human connection. US Cellular. Built for us. Find out more at uscellular.com/findus.
Dan Le Batard.
Again, started on the breakfast flan.
Oh, man, I've been singing a song to myself all morning long. Breakfast flan.
Stugotz.
Have you never heard the breakfast flan song?
No, hit me with it.
Okay. I wish I had some breakfast flan. Breakfast flan. Where can I find a breakfast like that?
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, how are you?
Not great.
Why?
The Heat stink, man.
They have us right where they want us, Mike.
The Heat stink.
They have the entire East right where they want us.
You're going to be wrong about this one, Mike. They're
Thank
really
you,
bad.
Mike, for being the only reasonable person here.
Groundhog Day.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Mike.
You're welcome.
Mike
Schur.
Sam
Mike
Hauser.
Schur.
Yeah.
How about that?
I told you, man. He has that dog in him. I told you.
Got that dog.
Is Schur
Nobody
doing the
listen
thing?
to me.
Are you doing the thing again where you're,
It's
not afraid?
yeah.
You are afraid of the Heat, but not.
No, he thinks that they're going to win the championship this year.
Because he's logical.
Yeah.
Come on. All right, Dan, give us a countdown.
I assumed that we had already started because this is what the real relationship actually is between Mike Ryan and Mike Schur. They circle each other warily, and Mike Schur is legitimately still scared of the Miami Heat, even as Amin El-Hassan. And thank you for joining us on what we're now calling long ball. It's taken
What does that mean?
a long time to get over here from Oddball. We've been waiting for him expectantly, but Amin doesn't like that what has stuck to him is he has already said the Celtics did not improve with that trade, and the Celtics yesterday scored 75 points in the first half and 80 points in the second half. They beat the Pacers by 50. They're clearly going to be good if they are healthy this year, and the Miami Heat start 1-4, and yet Mike Schur is still out here declaring that the Miami Heat are going to win the championship, which is laughable.
It's not. It's not laughable. How many times do we have to go through this? I don't understand. What do I have to do? Has any intern at any company ever overperformed their job title to the degree that I have? All I do is come on here and give you expert basketball analysis in the face of all of your skepticism, and all I get for it is grief. I don't understand this. What do I have to do to you people?
Well, because Mike's out again. They've started 1-4. He's done with Josh Richardson. And Mike, after 5 games, is done with this basketball team. He's asking Pat Riley for apologies. He's yelling at me on and off air, telling me that I'm an apologist and a shill and a Heat mouthpiece.
Kind of are sometimes.
I don't need this from you.
I have a top 5 list. Do you want to hear my top 5 list?
I do. What is it about?
Do you have a stat of the day, too?
I have a stat of the day, too.
Oh, that's great, because we have a
do.
corporate sponsor for that.
Oh.
All right,
I have a stat of the day, but let me give you my top 5 list. It's The top 5 Pacers you didn't know were Pacers.
Oh, this is fun. Yes.
Oh, there's one I know.
Early season fun. Yes, go ahead. Let's do it.
Number 5, Bruce Brown.
Yep. $50 million.
Number 4, Aaron Nesmith.
He also got paid.
Former Celtic great, Aaron Nesmith. Number 3, Buddy Hield.
Not for long, though.
Didn't know that.
No, but gunning and coming out just threes,
just
7 threes in 3 minutes.
Trying to get traded. Almost was a Heat culture person.
Number 2, another Celtic legend, Daniel Tice.
We call him the Team USA Slayer.
Yeah.
I remember JJ Redick was like, these guys go overseas, and when they play for their country, they play a role that's different from what the role they play in the NBA. I'm like, Daniel Tice was doing Daniel Tice things.
Did everything he did for the Celtics, he did for Germany. And number 1 Pacer, you didn't know was a Pacer, Mike Ryan, Top Shot legend, Obi Toppin.
Still available.
What is your stat of the day? Is it baseball related? We've talked a lot of baseball. We continue to alienate young people with how much baseball we're talking around here.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of stats from this World Series. This World Series that played out exactly the way that everybody kind of feared it would, which is to say badly. Here's your, you want to play the music? I got a bunch of stats, but there's one real stat of the day.
Lay out.
Start of the day, start of the day. This is start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. This is start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. This is start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. This is start of the day.
Brought to you by Venmo, your money, your move. Down to Josh Darrow.
First of all, Roy, thank you for turning on original sound so I can hear the music.
You got it, Mike.
Your move.
The Rangers went 11-0 on the road in this postseason, which is bananas. That's truly insane. And overall, in this postseason, road teams went 26-15 in the postseason. That's a .634 winning percentage. The Atlanta Braves, the best team in baseball this year, had a .642 winning percentage. So road teams in the playoffs essentially played like the Atlanta Braves did the entire season.
That's a good stat.
Insane.
That's a great stat. And this is why he dorks out on the podcast with Joe Posnanski. Are you guys doing like emergency World Series coverage? Because the regular season was so great. The skill was so great. Then the postseason maximum baseballed and the best teams left. And what you're left with at the end is a floating turd of nobody cares that nobody cares that the Rangers won, even though I can sit here and shill for baseball and like baseball and enjoy the World Series, but also see that the last 4 games, right when baseball had everyone in their grip after a great postseason, those last 4 games did not deliver the way football does in the witching hour every Sunday.
I mean, look, the Rangers, you could make the argument, were one of the, I don't know, not the best teams, but they were in the upper echelon of teams all season. They also did what every team's fans want their owners to do, which is they stunk for a long time, and then they went out and spent a bunch of money. They spent it on the right guys. They got Seager and Semien and all these guys, even though DeGrom fell apart. So it's not a bad story. And there's cool things that happen. Like Nate Eovaldi, who has basically cemented himself as a postseason legend. He threw 6 games in this postseason. His team won all of them. That's pretty amazing. He was great last night, even though he didn't have his best stuff. Bruce Bochy has now won 4 titles as a manager. There's only a handful of guys with more, and they're all like old timers except for Joe Torre. Also, Corey Seager. Here's another stat for you. Corey Seager's the only guy in any sport, or one of 2 guys in any sport, to win the championship MVP twice in 4 years with 2 different teams. The only one who did it is LeBron. So there's cool stories. There's fun things that happen. But after a season where like baseball actually for the first time in my adult lifetime made a play to improve itself and actually get new fans, it was just kind of a bummer of a postseason. Like all the coolest teams were eliminated early. A lot of the biggest stars were eliminated early. In fact, pretty much all of them except for Seager. And it just kind of ended with a whimper. It's a shame because the regular season was so fun. So whatever, we'll get them next year.
Do you have any other stats, or is that it for? Have we used up all?
That's not enough stats for you.
No, I just didn't know. No, it's enough. I just didn't know whether I had missed any. Yes, it's enough. I'm sorry I've offended you and how much you love
Here's
baseball.
a stat. Jaquez and Josh Richardson went a combined 2 for 18 from the field last night.
Wow.
It's his 4th game ever in the NBA.
He's 26 years old, though.
That's fair. No, the Heat have the East right where they want us, and we're all doomed. The longer this goes on, the longer they're in last place, the worse the future gets for me. And you know it's true. The Celtics look like world beaters after 4 games. The Heat look like they're a lottery pick through 5 games. Come talk to me in April. It's going to be bad.
You guys missed.
The honorable Emilio Hassan speaks now.
You guys missed Will Smith winning back-to-back World Series. He played.
Yeah, that's cool.
Braves 2 years ago. Last year was with the.
I don't understand this town crier character. I don't understand how this game works. Schur, thank you for being on with us. We appreciate it.
Anytime.
You sound defeated.
I am. It gets worse every day.